Hey everyone, Pickled Dill here. Welcome to the first part of What If Cynthia Raised Ash. This is a story I'm super excited to share with you. However, as you'll soon see, or should I say hear, I won't be the only one taking you on this journey. With me is my good friend plus Ultraman, and though at this point I hardly think he needs an introduction, I'll clear out for a minute so he can spruik and tell you a little more about this story.
Hey everyone, I'm Plus Ultraman, or just Plus if you prefer. If you don't know me, I usually cover what-if scenarios and discussions centered around shonen battle manga and anime like Dragon Ball, Naruto, and One Piece, for example. And have just pretty recently broken into the realm of Pokemon scenarios as well. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, the links to my channel are in the description. As for this story, we want to say explicitly this is not the spin-off series that Pickle will be covering for the GSA universe. And if you don't know what that is, link in the iCard, trust me, you'll thank me later. That story is being done by he and our pal Dex Comics, so please stay tuned for that as well. This story, however, is actually something Pickle and I have been collaborating on since January of 2022. And this concept is actually the runner-up idea I had before starting my first Pokemon What If, which as we now see has become massively popular, which is why we are both very proud and super excited to finally be rolling this project out to you. However, just before we do, we ask that you remain until the end of this video for some more important info. But that's enough preamble. Let's get on with part 1 of What If Cynthia Raised Ash.
We open in vast Pony Canyon with a woman and boy trekking through the sun-scorched basin. Tall, blonde, and possessing a strikingly regal bearing, the woman is unmistakably Cynthia, champion of the Sinnoh region, and in this timeline, mother to the youth walking beside her. Though his hair is now blonde, this boy is Ash, and just like his main timeline counterpart, something has him excited, meaning the young man can hardly contain himself. Eagerly, Ash asks his mother how much further to the altar of the sun, with Cynthia replying that it won't be long now, pointing to a structure in the distance. Ash squints, and upon confirming that it must be their destination, lets out a holler of adulation. Cynthia can't help but smile at her son's excitement, but it seems that she's not the only one who has heard, as a low snarl coming from one of the many caves pockmarking the canyon wall draws their attention. A moment later, an incensed Pokemon bursts from the cavern and bears down on the mother and son pair. It is large, leathery, and coated with golden metallic scales that create a cacophony of sound as it rushes at them. Recognizing this as a Kommo-o, one of the Alola Region's alpha predators, Cynthia does not hesitate to jump in front of Ash, throwing her arms wide, and only reaching for a Pokeball once she is sure he is properly shielded.
From her ball bursts Garchomp, Cynthia's faithful partner. When Kommo-o spots the other dragon type, its fury only builds, causing it to lunge forward and slash at Garchomp with gold-plated claws. At once, Cynthia has Garchomp meet this with a Dragon Rush, but instead of taking steps to defend itself, Kommo-o simply persists in slashing, getting more and more ferocious as Garchomp begins to push it back towards its cave. When this fails to stop Garchomp, it begins to use its fangs, biting into every inch of flesh it can reach, and even losing one in Garchomp's thick hide. However, even injury to itself does nothing to slow Kommo-o's assault, just as continual damage from Garchomp's super effective attacks haven't. And this troubles Cynthia. Something is plainly wrong with Kommo-o that it would act like this with no thought for self-preservation, and so she makes the decision. She must capture it so she can take it to someone who can help cure whatever issue has made it act this way. Calling for a Draco Meteor to finish things quickly, Cynthia watches as Kommo-o is blown backwards into its cave, and at the apex of its fall, she tosses a Pokeball which connects and then shakes vigorously, but does eventually fall still. Stepping into the cave to collect her newest Pokemon, Cynthia notices that Kommo-o has made this cave into a den, and then everything becomes clear as she sees that an egg has been nestled at its center. Smiling to herself, the champ muses that perhaps she and Kommo-o are not so different after all. Cynthia then calls Ash over, and after showing him the egg, asks if he can tell why Kommo-o was so aggressive towards them. Ash admits that it must have thought they were coming to attack its baby when it heard his yell earlier. Cynthia nods, pleased with her son's deductive reasoning, then gives him a piercing look and asks if he also knows what must be done about the egg. Ash meets his mother's eyes and says that he has to be the one to look after it since he's responsible for its mother being captured. Cynthia nods once more, reminding him that raising a dragon-type Pokemon will be the ultimate test of his resolve and his readiness to be a trainer overall, admitting that she had planned to breed a Gilbert form to make the process a little easier, but it seems that fate has other plans. Despite all his prior surety, there is a vulnerability in Ash's tone as he asks his final question, "Do you think I'm ready?"
Cynthia smiles at this, but it is a sad smile, and as she clutches her son close, she tells him that he is asking the wrong question to the wrong person, and it's only when he rectifies this that he will be able to find the answers he seeks. After this, the pair depart from the cave, Cynthia with Kommo-o's ball clipped to her belt, and Ash now cradling the egg in his arms. There is little conversation for the remainder of their trip, with Ash too deep in thought about what his mother said in the cave. So deep is his thought that he barely registers that they have reached the altar of the sun until Cynthia throws a hand out to stop him. Emerging from his stupor, Ash looks up to see that they are not alone. Standing atop the stairs to the shrine is a young man dressed in red, with hair like flames and a predator's snarl on his lips. Coarsely, he barks at the mother-son pair to explain what they're doing here, and Ash feels his stomach twist in instant dislike of this person, snapping that it's none of his business. This causes the young man to jeer that the baby can talk after all, but he rebukes that Ash should keep his mouth shut, since he was talking to the champ. Cynthia then lays a hand on Ash's arm, telling him to let her handle this, before addressing the red-clad youth with a smile. In a respectful tone, she states that if he knows who she is, then he might also know that she is an avid fan of history and lore, and that the altar is steeped in both. The young man scoffs at this, saying it sounds like a waste of time to him, and that a champion should focus on constantly getting stronger, not dusty old rocks. Cynthia chooses to ignore this rudeness, politely asking in that case what the young man is doing here. Brusquely, he answers that he is here on business, before hoisting up a guitar case and marching down the stairs. As he gets close, he growls that Cynthia better watch herself, since one day he's going to be the world's #1 dragon trainer, and when that day arrives, he's coming for her. He then shoulder barges the woman in a crass attempt to assert dominance, but all it achieves is making Ash see red. Taking a hand off his egg for the first time in hours, Ash grabs this arrogant jerk by the collar and spins him round, so they are face to face, before demanding that he apologize to his mother and face him in a battle right here, right now. The other boy tisks at this, saying he ain't apologizing since he didn't say anything untrue, and there's no way the great Ryuki would battle a baby like him, so he should just buzz off. He then slaps Ash's hand away, before sauntering off, with the dust blowing around the canyon soon hiding him from view. Still fuming, Ash vows that one day he's gonna make that jerk pay for what he said, before joining his mother, who has already begun climbing the altar's stairs, as if Ryuki's words meant nothing to her. At the top, Cynthia begins to lose herself in research, her inner mythology nerd overriding her usual serene demeanor. Normally, Ash would be right alongside her in this, helping her to decipher glyphs and taking notes of their findings. However, he now has two problems stewing in his mind, and so mostly takes a back seat in this excursion, standing by and polishing his egg. And it is fortunate that he does so, as when the sun begins to dip beneath the cliffs, Cynthia is still enraptured by exploring, and it falls to Ash for once to remind his mother of their pre-existing arrangement on Alola Island. With a sigh, Cynthia accepts this, bemoaning the fact that this trip isn't purely for the pleasure of researching ruins, and agrees that they had best be going if they want to make it to the exhibition match on time.
Using Garchomp, Ash and Cynthia take flight, soaring first over the barren landscape of vast Pony Canyon before reaching the more verdant climate of Pony Island, and then the deep blue of Alola's oceans. Thanks to Garchomp's immense speed, they do manage to make it to Alola Island, specifically the battle jump, but only just before the match is set to begin. When they arrive, Lucamine's aide Fava is frantic and furious, but Cynthia waves us off, explaining that they got a little waylaid enjoying local culture, but still managed to make it in time, which was what matters in the end. She then makes her way into the ring, her dusty and sweaty appearance standing in stark contrast to Lucamine's own pristine white clothes, the Mask Royale's vibrant colors, and Hala's pressed Taori jacket. The CEO of the Aether Foundation is a bit disgruntled at what she perceives as Cynthia not taking this exhibition seriously, but nonetheless introduces the combatants, as well as reminding everyone that this event is sponsored by Aether. The trainers then finally bring out their Pokemon for the Battle Royale, with Cynthia of course choosing Garchomp, Hala using his Hariyama, the Mask Royale using his Incineroar, and Lucamine choosing a Clefable, having picked it specifically to use his Fairy typing for an advantage against all her opponents. However, Lucamine quickly learns that type matchups aren't everything, as when she calls for an opening Moonblast on Garchomp, the champion level Land Shark simply sends the move back to Cinder by batting it back with its tail, thus hitting with double the force, knocking Clefable out and making Lucamine the first elimination of the match. As the crowd roars, the egg in Ash's arm begins to rattle and sing a response to the fervor, but the boy barely notices as the action in the ring is just too engrossing. Seeing how handily Sinnoh's champion dispatched one opponent, the Mask Royale and Hala form a temporary truce, having Hariyama and Incineroar rush at Garchomp together. Thinking fast, Cynthia has Garchomp take to the air, hoping to get behind the pair, but the Mask Royale is no slouch, and has Incineroar use Hariyama's back as a ramp to jump up in the air to knock the dragon out of it with Darkest Lariat. The blow is a solid one, even causing a small shockwave, as Tiger and Shark both crash down hard into the mat, with murmurs going up around the crowd that this might be the end for Cynthia and Garchomp. And the Royale laps this up, smirking towards Cynthia, but his joy turns to terror when she smiles back and tells her partner to stop fooling around and to get back up. Suddenly rising back to her feet, no worse for wear, Garchomp finally uses her first and last actual move of the match, Giga Impact. Then bathing herself in purple and orange energy, the dragon lunges forward, catching both Incineroar and Hariyama in its orbit and sending them flying into the ropes with such force that they slingshot back, only for Garchomp to lazily slap them out of the air with her tail once again, knocking them both out and attaining a flawless victory. The crowd go wild at such a conclusion, while at this moment of victory, Ash's egg finally stops rattling and suddenly cracks, getting his full attention as his heart stops while his mind races with uncertainty on if he's already done something wrong and harmed the young creature inside. Then, as if to soothe these fears, light begins to burst from those cracks as the shell begins to fade from existence with a flash that forces his eyes to close. The light fades, revealing a creature reminiscent of Kommo-o that looks to Ash and nuzzles into his chest in greeting as he hugs it back and remembers the name his mother called his new partner, Jangmo-o. Meanwhile, for her efforts, Cynthia is crowned the victor of the exhibition match, but before everyone can leave, Lusamine steps up and makes another announcement, that this match was simply to be a precursor to the very first official Alolan Pokemon League, obviously also being sponsored by her Aether Foundation, and will be taking place exactly 6 months from today. She then adds that everyone the audience saw compete tonight will also be competing in that tournament along with many more, causing Cynthia to have to cut in, as she says that no one told her that date and she has several title defenses coming up for the next 10 months, but wishes them all luck and looks forward to viewing the league. Lusamine, who is angry at both her defeat and now this upstaging, but also holds the media training needed to hide such ugly emotions, changes tact, saying that since it's her decision, it will be in 10 months then, since she'd hate for anyone to miss the opportunity to take on the world's strongest champion, or her opportunity for a rematch. Cynthia graciously accepts this date change and says that she looks forward to seeing the strongest Alola has to offer, as she and everyone else then leaves the ring. Ash then tries to make it to his mom to congratulate her and show off his new Pokemon, but the way is blocked by paparazzi and fans, so he goes outside to try and find a way back into her dressing room.
Here he bumps into a young man skulking about who introduces himself as Gladion after being pestered for his name long enough. Ash asks Gladion if he saw the match, which he did, and so Ash expresses awe for his mum's strength. This seems to piss Gladion off, who asks if Ash is going to enter the league. Ash says he is, and Gladion says that's good. A champion's son will be a good test of his power before he faces off with someone who he doesn't name, but his tone is full of animosity for. Ash says he won't go down easy, with Gladion saying they will see. However, unlike with Ryuki, this seems like genuine interest rather than a brush-off. Gladion then leaves, and Ash sneaks through the back entrance to the Battle Dome, making his way to Cynthia's dressing room. There she is chatting amiably with a shirtless man with a goatee, who upon Ash's entrance hastily stops what he's saying and loudly declares that he very much enjoyed watching Cynthia battle. Cynthia smiles at this and says she's glad he enjoyed her battle as well, especially against the Masked Royal. The man says he's sure the Royal enjoyed battling her too, before finally looking at Ash, greeting him and introducing himself as Professor Kukui. Ash shakes Kukui's hand, and they exchange pleasantries before Cynthia takes notice of Jangmo-o in Ash's arms, and expresses that she is impressed with how quickly it hatched. Ash is similarly delighted, recounting how it hatched at the moment she won. Being a student of mythology, Cynthia suggests that this may be an omen that it and Ash are fated to win the upcoming Alola League. This excites Ash, until he remembers that they're meant to be heading back to Sinnoh tonight, so he won't get much of a chance to train, much less take on the Alola version of the gym challenge. Cynthia gives him a knowing grin, saying she expected her son to be excited by the prospect of his first league, and tells him that she already made arrangements with Kukui here, so that if Ash wants to stay in Alola for a few months and get a feel for the region, he can. Ash delightedly hugs his mother, and she tells him to work hard and not forget what she's taught him. He promises to do his best, and with a chuckle, Cynthia grins that when they next meet, it will be as competitors. She then tells him to always remember that bonds with Pokemon are a privilege, not a right. He can't take them for granted, or any of his other bonds. There is a touch of melancholy to this last statement, as she thinks about how this journey will change Ash, and what that could mean for their family.
Cynthia then finally departs, while Kukui leads Ash to his boat, and the two get to know each other better. The professor is deeply interested in what it was like for the boy growing up around such an inherently strong battler, while also being touched at the deep admiration for which Ash speaks of his mother. In turn, Ash is fascinated by Kukui's research, thinking it's so cool that he studies different moves. And this excitement only grows when he hears from the professor that lately he's been studying a special kind of move that originated here in Alola. The preteen is deeply excited by the prospect of Z moves, asking if his Jangmo-o can learn one, and Kukui laughs and says that its final evolution, Kommo-o, actually does have a special Z move that only it can learn. But since he's a long way away from that, he should set his sights on first getting a Z ring, since without it, he can't use any Z moves at all, prompting Ash to question where he can get one. But before Kukui can give him an answer, they hear a cry from the water. Turning on a searchlight, they see a small brown furry thing thrashing in the water, and without hesitation, Ash hands Jangmo-o over to Kukui and then leaps overboard and paddles towards the drowning creature. Out here in the open ocean, the waves are rough, and Ash is pulled under a few times, but his love for Pokemon gives him strength to resurface and grab what he now sees as an Eevee. Tucking Eevee under one arm, Ash makes his way back towards the boat, and Kukui pulls him in with the life preserver when he gets close enough. Together, they then check on Eevee to see that it is fine, though its eyes are completely obscured by a fringe of fur, and Kukui speculates that this is probably what caused it to fall in the water in the first place. He then takes Eevee away to give it a more thorough inspection, leaving Ash and Jangmo-o alone. A while later, when they make port, they are greeted by a girl with pale blonde hair, dressed in white. Kukui introduces her to Ash as Lily, telling him that she's been staying with him as an assistant, then in turn introducing Ash and Jangmo-o. But when the baby tries to leap out of Ash's arms and into Lily's as a way of greeting, she shrieks and recoils. Kukui quickly apologizes, stepping in and informing the newcomers that Lily is deathly afraid of Pokemon and doesn't like them touching her. While Ash finds this strange since he loves Pokemon so much, to illustrate the maturity he's gained under his mother, he respects this and so asks if there's anything he or Jangmo-o can do to help. Lily says no, but thanks him for the offer, and so the trio return to Kukui's beach shack tired from their long days.
The next morning, Ash remembers the discussion he was having with Kukui about Z-Rings, and so tries to find the professor. Lily tells him that he already left to release Eevee safely back into the wild, and offers to take him to Kukui if he wants. Ash accepts, and so the pair head off, with Jangmo-o riding on Ash's shoulder. They find Kukui on Route 1, and so Ash gets a chance to say goodbye to Eevee before it scampers away. Kukui then asks if everything is okay, and Ash says he just wanted to ask how to get a Z-Ring. Kukui and Lily do a face fall over the fact that Ash literally ran all the way here because he couldn't wait for an answer to that question, with Kukui commenting that he's so like his mother that it's uncanny. He then writes himself and says Z-Rings are often given out to people who defeat kahunas. Ash asks what a kahuna is, and Kukui explains the whole concept of the Island Challenge, the Grand Trials, and the kahunas. This excites Ash, who thinks this will be a great way to train for the League, as well as learn about Z-moves. He asks where he can find this island's kahuna, and a rumbling voice suggests he tries looking behind him. Ash spins and sees Hulla from the Battle Dome, along with another young man who calls himself How. Hulla tells Ash that he is Mele Mele Island's kahuna, and that he would be happy to test himself against the son of Cynthia. But first, he has a matter of great urgency to attend to. Ash asks if there is any way he can help, both because that's the sort of good-natured guy he is, but also because on a more selfish level he believes it will help him get to his grand trial sooner. Hulla admits that he was going to have his grandson How help him, but a second pair of hands couldn't hurt. Lily offers to help too, but Kukui stops her, saying that he wants her to come with him, since after meeting Cynthia and hearing about her and Ash's adventure in Vast Pony Canyon, he has an idea for something that might help her overcome her fear of touching Pokemon. Lily accepts this, and so the pair depart. Before they go, Kukui stops beside Hulla and asks, "Is it him?" Hulla says he thinks it is, and Kukui says if things go sideways, he's just down the road. Hulla laughs that he may be old, but he's not helpless yet, then pats the professor on the arm, before the two groups go their separate ways, with Kukui and Lily heading back towards the Hau'oli outskirts, while Hulla, How, and Ash head north along Kala'e Bay.
As they go, Hulla briefs Ash on the issue they're on their way to resolve. Recently, reports have been coming in on troublemakers terrorizing the residents of Iki Town and Hau'oli City, but thanks to a tip-off from an unnamed source, Hulla has been able to track them back to their hideout in Seaward Cave. So, the three of them are going to drive out these miscreants. Ash and How both nod their agreement, as the entrance to the cave comes into view. Inside, our trio find an opposing one, as they see a boy and girl dressed in black with skull bandanas on their head, and sitting between them is a man about Kukui's age, sporting bleached white hair, asymmetrical sunglasses, and a gold pendant resembling a skull. At once, Hulla confronts this man, who he calls Guzma, saying that he thought he would be behind this, but hoped he was wrong, while Guzma coldly retorts that he's been waiting for Hulla to show up, and that he knew the only way to get the kahuna's attention was by being bad, since that's what Hulla had always thought he was. Hulla then somberly claims that this isn't true, but Guzma says that he's not here to talk, he's here to battle, so Hulla better put up his dukes. The Elder reluctantly agrees, telling Ash and Hal to deal with the lackeys. As Hala brings out his trusty Hariyama and Guzma responds with Golisopod, Ash and Hal step up to battle the boy and the girl, who bring out a Zubat and a Yungoos respectively. With only one option, Ash asks Jangmo-o if it's ready for his first battle, and seeing his baby dragon growl at his opponents and leap out in front of him protectively, he tells Hal that the two of them will handle Yungoos. Meanwhile, Hal brings out a lick, which Ash comments looks a lot like the Master Royale's Incineroar. Hal says that's why he caught it, admitting that he really admires the Master Royale's confidence, and hoped having a Pokemon from the same evolutionary line would help him develop the same kind of confidence. Ash quickly responds that he understands, having always wanted a dragon Pokemon of his own after watching his mom and Garchomp all his life. This little bonding moment helps the boys to get in perfect sync, and so they have no trouble teaming up. Yungoos proves to be stronger than Ash had originally assumed, and so earns itself the attention of both trainers, as they are quicker to gang up on it than their opponents are on them, allowing them to overwhelm it, so when it is out of the fight, they can turn their combined efforts on Zubat. This all being necessary since Jangmo-o is still only newly hatched, and Litten has to take the lead, but the experience it gains from simply being in a battle is immense, while for the trainers, Ash's keen eye for strategy honed under Sinnoh's champion, making it so he and Hal can flawlessly counter all that's thrown at them, just as Cynthia did during her exhibition match. At the same time the last grunt is dispatched, Hariyama forces Golisopod's ability emergency exit to kick in against Guzma's will, as it returns to his ball and Atropius is sent out in his place, causing Guzma to furiously curse his Pokemon for its cowardice, but seeing that he and his comrades are at a disadvantage, tells them to quote-unquote bug out. Hastily, the grunts return their defeated Pokemon to their balls, and then rush over to join Guzma on Tropius' back as the grass type takes flight. Hala tries to have Hariyama intervene, but it's too late, and the cackling Guzma says that he'll be back, and next time Hala won't be so lucky.
When the villainous trio are gone, Ash approaches Hala, saying they achieved their objective, but Hala seems dejected, admitting he had hoped when Guzma saw how outclassed he was, he would have agreed to talk things out, but once again, he'd been wrong about that boy. Allowing himself only a moment to mourn, Hala then stands up and thanks Ash and Hal for their help, saying that if they would like, he can face them each in a grand trial today. He then adds that Ash's will have to be this evening, however, since he did promise Hal a battle first. Ash completely understands, and so says he will stay around this area to get some training in. Hala praises this attitude, and gives Ash a map of the island, pointing out Icky Town, and telling Ash to come find him there at sundown. Ash promises that he will, and waves the others off before wishing Hal luck. In an attempt to give Hal a confidence boost, Ash adds that based on their battle together, he has no doubt that Hal will be able to win his grand trial. This makes the boys smile, as the grandfather and grandson round a bend and disappear out of sight. Now alone, Ash and Jangmo-o decide to do a little exploring. Heading south, they come to a fork in the road, and remembering how they came from the eastern route, go down the other. This leads them to a field of yellow flowers, which have such a sweet aroma that Jangmo-o leaps from Ash's shoulder and dashes among them. Laughing, Ash gives chase, until he feels something odd beneath the sole of his shoe. Looking down, he sees the tip of a rufflet's wing, who appeared to have been sleeping among the flowers. Ash immediately steps back, apologizing profusely, but the little Pokemon does not seem to be injured. It is angered, however, flapping into the air and pecking every inch of Ash it can get its beak on. Ash howls in pain, repeating his apologies, but it does little good to calm Rufflet down. It therefore falls to Jangmo-o to step in, taking a running leap and tackling Rufflet out of the air. For a moment the little flying type comes crashing to earth, but a single tackle is not enough to put it down for the count, and so it turns its ire on Jangmo-o. Even though Jangmo-o has not yet gained its future evolution's weakness to flying type moves, the hail of pecks still make it whine in pain, and so frantically, Ash scrambles for a way to help his partner. Tapping at his pockets and belt for something, he feels his fingers brush against one of the Pokeballs his mother had given him. He's never caught a Pokemon before, but this seems as good a time as any to start, and so our hero yells at Rufflet to draw its attention away from Jangmo-o, then tosses a ball which hits it squarely between the eyes. The ball shakes 3 times, then falls still, signifying Ash's first capture. Proudly he brings it out, and rapturously welcomes Rufflet to his team. Rufflet gives its new trainer a stern look in return, but this softens a bit when he picks a flower and playfully places it in the cream-coloured down that covers its head. Its esteem of Ash further raises when he offers for it to train with Jangmo-o and him for a battle against a powerful trainer that will be happening in a few hours. By the time this training session is finished, and Ash tells his Pokemon it's time to head to Icky Town and face Hala, Rufflet has fully embraced its place in his team, having deemed Ash and Jangmo-o both worthy of its loyalty and respect. When the group reaches Icky Town, night has fallen properly, and torches have been lit around a stone dais where Hala is waiting. He admits that he was starting to wonder if Ash would ever turn up, but Ash says he wouldn't miss this match for the world. Hala says that's good, and welcomes him to join him on the dais. As he climbs the steps to the battlefield, Ash catches sight of Hao, who is watching him from the other side of the clearing. When he sees Ash looking at him, he flashes a strange bracelet that he didn't have before, which Ash presumes is a Z-ring, and gives Ash a wink, which he interprets as encouragement that Hao thinks he can win one of his own.
Finally in position, Ash tells Rufflet to show Hala what they're made of, setting the tone for his first challenge in Alola, while Hala brings out his Hariyama. Ash worries that the difference in size and likely experience between Rufflet and Hariyama will daunt the little bird, but to his surprise, Rufflet welcomes the challenge, cluing Ash in on its more combative personality compared to his newly hatched Jangmo-o, and reminding him of Ryuki's baby comments. Buoyed by Rufflet's warrior spirit, Ash tells his Pokemon to get in close, and Rufflet is more than happy to obey, darting through the air at Hariyama as its wings begin to glow. However, Hala seems unfazed by this display, and orders Hariyama to endure the attack, wanting to gauge Ash's power. As a result, Wing Attack connects, and though super effective against the fighting type, Hariyama stays strong. Using an insight born from decades of battling, Hala asks Ash if this is his first battle with Rufflet, and he admits that it is. The Kahuna then says that it shows in the lack of synchronicity. Though they do work effectively in tandem, they are still two individual units rather than one united force, and until they find that unity, they will never be able to reach their fullest potential. Being unable to resist a teachable moment, he then adds that Alola's beauty comes from humans and Pokemon living in perfect harmony, and volunteers to demonstrate that harmony through his next attack. Hala then calls for Hariyama to use close combat, and with surprising speed, the rotund fighting type leaps at Rufflet, slamming it with a meaty palm larger than Rufflet's entire body. This causes the flying type to plummet towards the ground, but a cry of encouragement from Ash is enough to reinvigorate it. And so Rufflet catches itself with a swift aerial recovery before flapping its way up to Hariyama's eye level. The Kahuna of Melee praises that the pair have guts, but guts alone don't win grand trials. Ash then asks whether Hala really thinks he doesn't have a strategy, reminding the older man who his mother is. He calls for a tailwind, causing winds to whip up around them before ordering another wing attack. Rufflet rushes in once more, but this time with such speed that Hariyama hasn't even received its orders before glowing wings sends it skidding backwards with a groan of pain. Hala then admits that maybe he did underestimate the pair a bit, since raising their speed so they can close the distance before being attacked is quite clever. However, it will do little good against an unending onslaught of attacks, which just so happens to be his and Hariyama's specialty. He then spreads his legs, crouching and balling both hands into fists, then thrusting forward as though he were about to enter the ring to fight beside Hariyama, while his partner adopts a similar stance in unison with Hala, as a brown flame-like aura begins to encase them both. Ash then hears Hao's voice as he gasps that his grandfather is using the fighting-type Z move, all-out pummeling. Hala and Hariyama then begin thrusting their fists forward in a flurry of blows, and from this burst giant spectral fists made of the same aura coating both of them. Ash begs Rufflet to dodge, but the fists keep coming hard and fast, and though Rufflet is able to evade the first few, before it can rise high enough to get clear, a fist strikes squarely on the beak, causing it to lose its bearings long enough for another fist to clip it in the wing. Then a third and fourth hit Rufflet's torso in close succession, and by this point, Rufflet is well and truly at the mercy of the Z move, meaning all Ash can do is yell encouragement for his friend to tough it out and come back with a counterattack. However, this is only wishful thinking, as when the spectral barrage fades, Rufflet falls from the sky and lays sprawled out on the ground, unconscious.
Recalling it to its ball, Ash thanks Rufflet for its efforts, telling it that it deserves a good long rest, before calling for Jangmo-o to take the stage. Jangmo-o looks a bit hesitant at this request, having witnessed Hariyama's Z move from Ash's shoulder. But not wanting to let its partner down, it does eventually hop into the ring, making a cute jingling noise as it does. Hala asks if Ash is sure he wants to use a baby Pokemon, and though the question comes from a place of genuine concern, it strikes a nerve, coming awfully close to Ryuki's comment in Vast Pony Canyon. As a result, there is an edge of petulance to Ash's voice when he replies that he's sure. Hala says that the choice is ultimately up to him, and so if that is what Ash chooses, he will resume the battle. The Kahuna then calls for another close combat, and though Ash tells Jangmo-o to dodge, terror at being attacked by such a large opponent paralyzes the infant Pokemon. Unable to move, it seems as though this is game over for Jangmo-o and Ash's grand trial ambitions. But then a shimmering haze begins to form in front of the little dragon type. When Hariyama's hands come into contact with this, it is brought to a sudden stop, and though it tries to push through with its other hand, nothing can seem to make the haze budge. Hala then wisely tells Hariyama to fall back, saying that Jangmo-o seems to have learned protect in the heat of the moment, and that Ash should be proud. Ash says that he is, praising his Pokemon for coming up with a way to save itself, before ordering a tackle. feeling more confident after escaping Hariyama's finishing blow, or perhaps just high on adrenaline, Jangmo-o dashes towards the big fighting type with all the power its small frame can muster, before leaping up and diving headfirst into its stomach. Though it is not an especially forceful blow, the impact sends Hariyama toppling backwards, and when it comes crashing to a halt, it is unconscious. For a moment, both Ash and Hala are confused as to how this managed to take out a Hariyama that had previously shared a ring with a champion Garchomp. For Ash remembers the side effect of close combat, being the lowering of the user's defense. He then surmises that between 2 close combats and a few hits from Rufflet's super effective flying attacks, it only took a small push to knock Hariyama out. Hala seems to tumble to this conclusion a moment later and praises Ash, Rufflet and Jangmo-o on their teamwork, saying that even if they are all new friends, he can sense a very strong bond developing between them. Ash thanks Hala, but the Kakuna tells him not to thank him yet, since he still has one more Pokemon, and Ash isn't going to like what it is. He then brings forth his Crabominable, which as Hala predicted, Ash isn't happy to see, knowing that Jangmo-o is at a severe type disadvantage. Nonetheless, his mother had always taught him that hard work and clever strategy could overcome things like type matchups, and so Ash calls for Jangmo-o to come back to their side of the field so they can get this final bout underway. As it moves, Ash notices something interesting. Jangmo-o's movements are faster than they should be on such short legs, and he wonders if the after effects of Rufflet's Tailwind is still helping them. Making a note to thank the bird after the battle, Ash bids Hala to take the first move.
Hala graciously accepts and tells his Pokemon to use Power-Up Punch. Crabominable yelps happily, then scuttles in with one of its pincers taking on a faint golden glow. But Ash has no intention of just taking the hit, and so orders another tackle. Jangmo-o repeats his lunging attack from earlier, and as Ash suspected, its speed is enhanced, allowing it to duck under Crabominable's attack and strike true. Ash then calls for a Leer, which causes Jangmo-o to fix Crabominable with a steely glare, but from one so young and small, it comes across as more adorable than intimidating. The old Kahuna belly laughs at this, wondering what strategy Ash is cooking up, but admits that he is a creative lad to think of using the carry-on effect of Tailwind to get in 2 moves in the time it took him to use 1. However, by his estimate, those effects will fade rather soon, so Ash had better make the most of it while he can. The Sinnoh native says he plans to do just that, ordering Jangmo-o to use 2 more Leers back to back, and with that, the very last of the winds die down. Hala, confused, asks if those Leers were all he was hoping for, and Ash grins, saying that they were just what he needed to set up his victory. This intrigues Hala, who says he hopes his next attack won't foil those lofty ambitions, before calling for another Power-Up Punch, but on the contrary, Ash says Hala just did him a favor. He then instructs Jangmo-o to leap over the punch and climb Crabominable's arm. Jangmo-o does so, springing into the air and narrowly avoiding the attack as it clambers up the crustacean's wrist. But Hala is unwilling to just sit back and let the boy put his plan into motion, and so tells his Pokemon to use another Power-Up Punch. The Ice type's other pincher lights up, and Ash just coolly tells Jangmo-o to switch arms. The baby dragon does as told, leaping over the punch like last time and scrambling up the other arm, and this pattern continues twice more, each time Jangmo-o's evasion of the punch getting narrower and narrower. But finally, Jangmo-o is able to climb onto one of Crabominable's shoulders, and from there leap onto its head. Ash then orders it to show Crabominable the scariest Leer yet, and Jangmo-o does so by hanging upside down from the Ice type's hair so that it can glare directly into its eyes. This startles the crab so much that it instinctively tries to knock Jangmo-o away with another Power-Up Punch, and it is only then that Hala realizes what Ash's strategy has been all along. Desperately, he tries to yell for his friend to stop, but it is far too late, and so as Jangmo-o drops to the ground, Crabominable punches itself in the face full force with a super effective fighting type move, knocking itself out.
With that, the match is called in Ash's favor, and as Hala walks over to shake Ash's hand, he admits that it was a stroke of genius to use Crabominable's tactic of powering up against it, while also steadily lowering its defense so that one super effective move could take it out. Ash beams and admits that he only came up with that plan because he knew that Crabominable was too well trained for him and Jangmo-o to take out, so he had to find a way to make it knock itself out. Hala nods appreciatively at the compliment, then presents Ash with a brown diamond-shaped object, which he calls a Phytinium Z, the fighting type Z crystal. He then pulls a bracelet similar to How's one from his back pocket, saying the young man will need both of these things if he is to complete the rest of his trials. Ash's smile grows even wider at this, and he promises to put these gifts to good use in the remaining trials and at the League. Hala pats his head, saying he is sure Ash will, before commenting that it's getting late, and he should probably get home before Kukui starts to worry about him. Ash nods and so the pair part ways. As Ash heads back down Route 1 to Kukui's beach shack, he finds himself with an unexpected travel companion, How. Hao has nothing but praise for Ash's battling, and Ash says that he is sure Hao's must have been just as impressive to earn him that Z-ring. Hao says he guesses so, but he still has a long way to go. Ash admits that he's in the same boat, and so the two boys decide to make a vow to both work really hard over the next few months, then face off in the league to show how much they've grown. With that said, Ash turns off the main route to traipse over to Kukui's place, while Hao keeps following the road into the city. When Ash gets inside the house, Lily is already asleep, but Kukui is waiting, and upon spotting Ash's new Z-ring and Phytinium Z, concludes that the grand trial must have gone well. Ash tells him that it did, and proceeds to go into a blow-by-blow of the match, until finally Kukui has to be the adult and put his foot down, saying that Ash needs to go to bed since it's almost midnight and there's much to do in the morning. He also asks him to give him both Jangmo-o and Rufflet's Pokeballs, since he's quite certain they are tired too, and would like to give them both a checkup. Remembering his place here in Alola as Kukui's ward, Ash respectfully obeys and thanks his mentor before retiring to his room and crashing into his bed, drifting off to sleep moments later as his own adrenaline and excitement from today's thrilling events finally leave him, allowing his mind to rest. He awakens a few hours later as early morning light peeks through a crack in his doorway, and the telltale sound of Pokemon being released from their balls heralds the arrival of Jangmo-o and Rufflet, who quickly nestle into his warm bed with him and help lull him back into a peaceful sleep.
Finally, around mid-morning after being allowed to sleep in for so long, Kukui asks Lily to go and wake Ash up since his breakfast is already stone cold and they have a few things to do today that he wants the boys' help with. Dutifully, Lily goes to do just that, entering into Ash's darkened room where his blinds have been shut to keep out the morning light. However, she is unfortunately unprepared for the heads of Jangmo-o and Rufflet to pop out from under Ash's blankets instead of its own to see who has come to ruin their snoozing. This results in Kukui and his partner Burnett being treated to a shrill shriek, a loud smack, and then a slightly less shrill shriek they assume is from Ash before seeing the girl bolt from Ash's room and out of the house in a terrified panic. Soon followed by a very confused looking blonde boy in his pajamas still sporting a massive red handprint on his face. Kukui apologizes to Ash, having forgotten he let him keep his Pokemon out of their balls last night, and Burnett smacks him upside his head for setting Lily up for such a scare when he knew the girl's problem. The husband then apologizes shamefully, making himself fully accountable for the entire situation, though Ash chimes in that he should have also made sure to teach his Pokemon to give Lily her space, in an attempt to spare Kukui from some of the blame. Burnett, however, tells him not to blame himself for Kukui's mistakes, as the strange patchwork family go to find their lost member. Before long, they do find Lily, under a tree and hyperventilating a bit, still with obvious remnants of tears on her face. Kukui and Ash apologize, but this only causes the girl to feel shame, as they obviously hadn't meant to scare her. And this time the Pokemon who'd caused the panic attack hadn't even made contact with her, but she still had the exact same reaction, if not worse. Quietly, she admits that a small part of her is beginning to feel like she'll never overcome this issue, and that it will not only become a barrier between her and Pokemon, but between her and other people as well. Fresh tears then begin to roll again as she quietly chokes out that she doesn't think she can handle losing anyone else. To her surprise though, Burnett quickly pulls her up and into a hug, one which Kukui quickly joins in on, as the two promise that Lily could never do anything to turn them against her, even if she tried, and reassure that they'll overcome this problem with Pokemon together. That makes her feel a bit better, enough to turn to Ash slightly in the hug and quietly ask if he would join in too, since it would assuage her fears even more. Only a tad awkwardly, Ash joins the group hug and states his own intent to keep his bond with Lily strong since they are friends, causing the girl to blush in embarrassment under all this compassion. However, in this moment, it is exactly what she needs to relax, and after a while longer, she agrees to return home with everyone.
Returning to his cold breakfast, Ash quickly begins to dig into it, only for Burnett to lightly smack his hands as she tells him that she could warm it up for him fairly quickly, and reminding him that he should go and feed his Pokemon their own breakfast after they battled so hard for him yesterday. Ash agrees and thanks her, before bolting off to do just that, while Kukui asks Lily if she'd join him in his study, as he has something for her. When she enters the room, the thing which draws her attention at once is the large clear cylinder on the man's desk, inside of which is very obviously a Pokemon egg. Kukui explains that he's hoping Lily would take care of this egg for him, as both a part of his research and a step towards helping her conquer her fear. Lily seems reluctant to accept it, reminding her mentor she can't touch Pokemon without freaking out, but Kukui asks her to hear him out first, citing that Ash and his Jangmo-o haven't known each other long, but already hold a bond worthy of partners of several decades due to his raising the creature from an egg. Because of how baby Pokemon imprint and show loyalty to those around them upon their birth, it makes sense to him that such a Pokemon could be just what Lily needs, since their bond might be strong enough to even transcend her Pokephobia. Still seeing the girl hesitate, he elaborates that maybe she should think of it in a different way. The thing inside this egg isn't a Pokemon. Pokemon can take care of themselves and do all kinds of amazing things. What would hatch from this egg, however, would need to be cared for until it could fend for itself. It'd be a baby. Lily seems to warm up to the idea a bit more once she recognizes that the Pokemon egg is something fragile and in need of protection. It couldn't hurt her. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's something weak which could only be preyed upon. Feeling a kinship with such a creature, she decides to take Kukui up on his offer, at least until the egg hatches. When they return to the dining room, it's actually empty, and a small commotion outside draws them to join Ash and Burnett in the backyard. It seems they're helping Rufflet and Jangmo-o get some early morning exercise with a quick practice battle, with Burnett taking the role of Rufflet's trainer and Ash Jangmo-o's. Kukui is happy to see the two getting along, while Lily watches on a bit enamored with Ash's strength. Despite all her fears, she knows deep down that if she wants to protect herself and her family, she will have to gain that kind of strength too. If only she knew how. Hanging her head, she catches sight of the egg incubator wrapped in her arms. Maybe.
In the end, Burnett proves her experience and battling acumen to be far greater than that of Ash and Jangmo-o, as she makes perfect use of Rufflet's tailwind to allow the bird to perform a myriad of home claws in a short span of time to up its own power exponentially, before confidently commanding the flying type to end the battle in one shot with wing attack. However, Ash is ready and reveals Jangmo-o is protected at the last possible moment. Burnett praises the thought towards defense for such a young trainer, but reminds him that Protect gets less effective the more it's used, and so orders another wing attack. This time, Rufflet is able to burst through Jangmo-o's shimmering barrier, and the two crash into each other rather hard. But it quickly becomes apparent that Rufflet has a small experience and power advantage over its teammate. Both Pokemon stagger back to their feet, taking after their fiery trainer, but Jangmo-o seems to exemplify this never say die attitude with every fiber of its being, suddenly crying out cutely as its scales jingle while orangish-brown energy surges around it. Its head crest begins to glow the same color, and it rams into Rufflet hard enough to send the lightweight bird flying back at high speed. Rufflet nearly even collides with a nearby tree, but thankfully Burnett is able to show off her acrobatic and athletic skills as well, running and jumping to catch it at the last possible moment. Ash and Jangmo-o then worriedly rush up to her, completely confused as to what has happened as they help the two up, while Kukui and Lily join them, with Kukui congratulating Ash and Jangmo-o as it seems they've learned the move reversal. Explaining the mechanics of the move, he says its power grows the more its user fatigues, causing Ash to nod in understanding as he realizes that since Jangmo-o was on his last legs, the move must have been supercharged, thus making it a technique they have to be somewhat careful about.
The group then return to the beach shack so Kukui can treat Ash's Pokemon again. When they are healed, the professor excitedly begins preparing materials to start some research on the use of Z-moves between a trainer and Pokemon who'd been hatched by that trainer, as he reveals that he wants to show Ash and Jangmo-o how to use all-out pummeling. The two seem surprised but excited, while Burnett chides her husband's one-track mind, asking what of the other things on their agenda for the day. Balking a little, he realizes that she's correct, but reveals that he's gotten most of it done, since his two main goals were to teach one of Ash's Pokemon a fighting move, and get Lily her egg. This at last brings Ash's attention to the incubator in Lily's arms, causing him to congratulate his friend, and express a lot of genuine pride in her, saying that it's clearly a massive step forward for the girl who'd slapped him in terror that morning, a statement which causes Lily to feel both pride and some embarrassment. Encouraged by his kindness, Lily marshals her courage and rather breathlessly asks Ash if he'd be willing to allow her to accompany him on his island challenge. She just has this feeling that her path forward is intertwined with his. The girl then pauses, her face turning red, believing she's made an utter fool of herself, but Ash chuckles and happily accepts her company. The group then decide to spend the rest of their day preparing Ash and Lily for their next destination, which is a color island. Kukui is also very serious about giving Ash and Jangmo-o Z-move training. However, it quickly becomes apparent that both trainer and Pokemon would need more time to master their new ultimate technique, since Ash has a distinct lack of rhythm, which impedes his ability to get even the simple movements down, while Jangmo-o, as a quadruped, has a bit of trouble with the punching motions of the technique, since it first has to learn how to balance on its hind legs while doing it. Kukui estimates that the duo are only about 60% of the way towards mastery when they finally call it a day. And though Ash and Jangmo-o want to train more, Kukui insists that they stop here, if Ash doesn't want to wear himself out and miss the boat in the morning.
The next morning, Kukui and Burnett see Ash and Lily off, with the professor telling Ash to keep up his and Jangmo-o's training of all-out pummeling, while Burnett hugs Lily tight and tells her that at any point she wants to come home, their place will always be open to her. With that said, the new duo board their boat, taking their first steps into a wider world. Since the trip to Akala Island is said to be a few hours, Ash tries to use this time to get to know Lily better, asking how she came to stay with Kukui and Burnett. But the other blonde gives a bare-bones explanation that the two professors took her in after some stuff happened with her family. Here, the increased insight Ash has gained thanks to Cynthia comes in handy, and he can tell that Lily doesn't want to talk about the subject any more than that, so attempts to change it. However, still being Ash, he rather densely changes the subject to something even worse, asking where Lily's fear of Pokemon came from. Lily's response is of course another curt one, saying that she doesn't know, and she has just feared Pokemon for as long as she can remember. Recognizing his mistake, Ash tries to apologize, but Lily has already withdrawn into herself, and so she just sits there, mechanically tapping the incubator while saying nothing. Ash does try to engage with her a few more times after this, but when her responses prove to be similarly limited, he decides to leave her be to put his time to better use in practicing the motions for his Z move with Jangmo-o. So, it is mid-afternoon when the boat finally docks in Heihei City, and though Ash and his baby dragon's training session has produced little in the way of improvement, one benefit of the time apart is that Lily is back to her usual self, so she and Ash disembark together. Still feeling pretty bad for having upset her earlier, Ash asks if there's anywhere Lily wants to visit on the island before they try to find the kahuna. Lily admits that she's always wanted to try the fresh Moo milk ice cream from the Paniola Ranch, since it's said to be the best in Alola, and the son of Cynthia is all too happy to agree to the request now that it'll mean cheering up his stomach as well as his friend.
And so the pair set off with Lily in the lead, heading north past Paniola Town up towards the ranch. However, along the path, Ash catches sight of a wild Mareep and declares his intention to catch it. But it seems Mareep has other ideas, bolting off the beaten path and into the woods. Ash naturally follows after Mareep, with Lily close behind. Together the pair give chase, but quickly find themselves lost with no sign of the Pokemon, nor any idea how to get back to the trail. As a result, Ash suggests they keep pushing forward, and after a little while they come out onto plainland. Lily then spots a building in the distance on top of a hill and says that must be the ranch. Ash sheepishly admits that he's glad he didn't lead them too far off course in his excitement, and together he and Lily start walking towards the ranch. The walk proves to be longer than expected, with the sun soon hanging low in the sky while Ash and Lily are nowhere near the ranch. But this is not the only problem they face. While stopping to admire a corral of Miltank, our duo hear a young man's voice yelling at them to get away from the Pokemon. Spinning around, Ash and Lily see a boy about their age with brown and red spiky hair and Kukui's penchant for shirtlessness approaching them with an angry look on his face. Calling them poachers and trespassers, the boy lobs a Pokeball in their direction, from which bursts a red and yellow Pokemon with a long snout and spiked shell. Lily tells Ash that this is a Turtonator, a fire and dragon type. And when Lily says dragon, Ash knows just what to do, and calls Jangmo-o down from its perch on his shoulders.
Still very much in his toddler phase, Jangmo-o seems slightly reluctant to battle something more than 3 times his size if it were to stand on his hind legs, but for Ash, it is willing to try. Jingling as it leaps onto the grass, the baby dragon tries to pull off an intimidating snarl, but Turtonator is obviously not afraid of it, and on the young man's command, tries to flatten the smaller reptile with a dragon tail. Jangmo-o is able to dive out of the way just in time, but it is still too close for Ash's liking, and just from the one attack, he can see that Turtonator's power vastly outstrips his baby's. For these reasons, he decides not to mess around any longer, and to open up with their Z move. Spreading his legs just like Hala did during their grand trial, Ash crouches low and balls his hands in a fist before thrusting them forward. At this point, brown energy begins to surround Ash as Jangmo-o rises onto his hind legs to try and imitate him. However, being naturally a quadruped and still very unbalanced as a young child, it swiftly falls backwards and lands on his butt, much like Cynthia would often remind Ash he used to do as a baby first learning to walk. This dispels the energy of their failed Z move, but their opponent doesn't take this opportunity to strike while they are defenseless, instead calling out to ask if they are trying to use all-out pummeling. Ash then cautiously confirms this, admitting that they saw Kahuna Hala use the move in their grand trial, but haven't been able to pull it off themselves yet. The young man seems to ponder this for a moment, and then tells Turtonator to stand down before approaching Ash and Lily. With a rueful smile, he apologizes for attacking them and calling them poachers, explaining that lately, an unscrupulous individual has been trying to drive his family off their land by any means necessary. Lily says that's horrible, and she completely understands why he'd be so distrustful of unfamiliar faces walking around their property. The young man tells her that he appreciates their understanding and introduces himself as Kiawe. The two blondes then in turn introduce themselves, explaining how they were on their way to the ranch to try the ice cream, but got lost after chasing a Mareep. Kiawe chuckles and says that it's probably his little sister Mimo's Mareep, and explains that it's always getting out, before offering to escort them up to the ranch, saying that and some free ice cream is the least he can do after the whole misunderstanding. Ash and Lily happily accept, and so the three chat amiably as they make their way up the hill to the main house.
Inside, Kiawe says to wait there and he'll fetch their ice creams, but a man's voice playfully chides no ice cream until after dinner. The owner of the voice then pokes his head out of the door, looking like an older bespectacled version of Kiawe with a more conservative haircut. He introduces himself as Rengo, Kiawe's father, and insists that as friends of Kiawe's, they simply must stay for dinner. When Ash's stomach growls thanks to not having eaten anything since breakfast, Rengo takes this as confirmation, and so leads the guests inside. Here Lily and Ash become acquainted not just with Kiawe and Rengo, but his aforementioned little sister Mimo and his mother Seema. Mimo takes an immediate liking to Lily, and so talks her ear off over dinner, while Seema and Rengo ask Ash about his island trial experience, and upon learning that he has already beaten Hala, express their admiration for the feat. However, this also prompts Seema to challenge Ash to a battle, saying that her father was the old kahuna of Akala Island, and she's just as strong as he ever was. This embarrasses Kiawe, who says that Ash and Lily have had a long day and they probably don't want to get all worked up battling, but Ash is always keen to battle strong trainers, and so he and Rufflet head outside to meet Seema's challenge, while Jangmo-o naps on the front porch. This match is a close one, with Rufflet ultimately pulling out a win against Seema's Herdia after incorporating Burnett's strategy from earlier, but Ash has to give the woman credit that she is definitely a capable battler. Seema proudly says that she has to be to protect her family, a sentiment that seems to resonate with Lily as she watches the battle unfold.
After all is said and done, the family along with Ash and Lily all share a dessert of moo milk ice cream, with Lily even gushing that it is everything she had hoped it would be and more. Rengo beams that it's sweet of her to say, and Seema, having become endeared to the children, offers her and Ash to stay the night, since as newcomers to the island they probably don't have anywhere else to go. Lily protests that she doesn't want to be an imposition, but Rengo states that hospitality is one of the customs of Akala Island, and so with no further arguments, Ash, Lily, and the Pokemon settle in for an early night. And it is a good thing they do so, as before dawn the next morning, Kiawe knocks twice on Ash's door, telling him to get up since they have chores to do. The groggy blonde protests that it's too early for chores, but Kiawe just chuckles at this and says that you have to start pretty early if you want to get everything done on a ranch. After another moment to get his bearings, Ash does agree to help as thanks for taking him in, and so he and Kiawe get to work mucking out the Mudbray stable. By the time this is done, it is sunrise, and so Lily and Mimo have come to join them in feeding the Pokemon. This at first unnerves Lily a bit, but when a milk tank unexpectedly licks her hand, it tickles enough to make her laugh, and in that moment she manages to forget her fears. This sight gives Ash a surge of hope, and so he discreetly asks Kiawe and Mimo to let Lily take the lead on this job. The siblings are happy enough to oblige, and so the three of them encourage Lily as she gives more food to the other various species of Pokemon around the ranch, even if half the time she just throws the food at them and backs away. However, when they come to the last pen, Kiawe steps in, saying that he'd better feed this last one. Lily, having become pretty confident, asks why, and he explains that the last Pokemon is a wild and aggressive Tauros, who has to be kept in his own pen because he attacks any other human or Pokemon he comes into contact with, quickly and unfortunately draining that confidence. As Lily says that sounds terrifying, and Mimo confirms that it is, saying that she even nicknamed that Tauros Old Meanie.
While Kiawe goes to feed Old Meanie, he asks Ash if he could do him a favor and head into the city to drop off Mr. Morimoto's Moo Milk delivery, offering to lend him his Charizard to cut travel time. Ash says he'd be happy to help, and so Kiawe calls forth a Charizard with a saddle on its back and a harness attached to a crate for carrying milk bottles. When Mimo fills the crate with bottles, Ash climbs onto Charizard's back, and the flame Pokemon takes flight. Ash is amazed by how fast Charizard's flying speed is, yet how smooth the flight feels as they burst through the clouds. Clutching the saddle to ensure he doesn't fall off, Ash lets out an exhilarated laugh, and Charizard decides to show off a little for the new rider, pushing itself to the max so that everything blurs around Ash and he feels like his stomach has been left at the ranch. However, even Charizard cannot keep this up forever, and so slows down after a few minutes, having already arrived at the city that took Ash and Lily half a day to depart from on foot. Setting down outside Mr. Morimoto's office building, Ash pats Charizard's head, then collects the milk crate and heads inside to deliver it.
When this is done, instead of climbing back on a Charizard, Ash decides to go and buy some Melisadas for everyone, and so asks Charizard to stay where it is while he ducks through an alleyway that he remembers was connected to the main street. However, as he makes his way through, Ash's path is suddenly blocked by a group of Pokemon that he recognizes as the Steel-type Ponyard. Moving in to investigate, Ash sees to his horror that the group appear to be ganging up on a differently colored Ponyard. as two of the normal colored ones hold the blue Poniard's arms out in an arm lock that keeps it from moving. A third and larger one repeatedly assails it with a series of brutal metal claws to the torso. Realizing that he left both Jangmo-o and Rufflet back at Kiawe's farm, and that Charizard is too far away to call for help, Ash leaps into action himself, yelling at the attacking Poniard to knock it off and startling the trio. At first, they seem confident enough to want to press their numbers and inherent arms advantage against the lone boy, but standing firm in the same regal way the champion of Sinnoh would in this same situation, he is actually able to intimidate them by sheer force of will and guts alone. As they decide to scatter and flee, the clearly wounded blue Poniard falls face forward down in the dirt, and rushing over to it, Ash inspects the damage and sees that this Pokemon has endured a lot, commenting genuinely that it must be really tough to have held out against those bullies for so long. Turning a single yellow eye on Ash, Poniard nods resolutely and then passes out.
And that's where we'll leave things. But before we go, there's a few things we'd like to let you know. First of all, thank you for watching. Your support means the world to us.
Second, even though this first season of the story will all be on Pickle's channel, yes, we currently have at least 2 planned, and the second season will also probably be on Pickle's channel. Please don't forget to subscribe to both our channels for updates on this story, as well as all other content, especially those of you who originate from my community. And before we forget, we also want to give a big shout out to Cobb's Arts for the commission art of the son of Cynthia, Ash, since we were very happy with it and think he did an awesome job, and definitely intend to get more of it as we continue on.
Third, if you have any thoughts, suggestions, or screams of rage, be sure to leave them in the comments below.
And finally, remember to take care of yourselves and the world around you, and as always, go beyond plus ultra. And we'll see you guys next time.
As the journey continues.